Welcome to a new episode of Talking Out Cloud. Today with me I have Mark, who is the lead of the managed service team at Intercept. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Welcome. Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure having you here. So before I do my introduction about this episode, maybe you can do a brief introduction about yourself.
Yes, of course. Mark Bosgoed, 37 years old, working within Intercept for more than 9 years already. Started as an engineer, and now in the position that I'm responsible for the managed service part for Intercept. So I don't do all the work myself, of course, but I'm streamlining the processes, the teams, and everything around it. A little bit facilitating so that people can do their work and do the work for our customers. Before Intercept, I worked almost 5 years in a accountancy firm in a support role. And before that, and I don't think that's interesting for this podcast, but that was hospitality, so it's a totally different branch.
Cool.
But I love IT from the day on, so it's nice to be here now.
Cool, thanks, appreciate it. So today we will talk a bit about MSPs and what's the value of having a partner when moving forward in the innovation space or adopting the Azure or AWS services. If you ask me, like, what is a managed service provider, so an MSP, I believe that's a partner actually driving innovation to the end customers, providing proactive insights, scalability, modernized operations, automation, probably many more things. Why? Because I guess from a customer angle, they would like to focus definitely on the core business. So what if they actually are able to use a partner to facilitate that, right? To take away all the let's say additional workloads and tasks. On the other hand, why is a partner looking into a managed service provider? I would say that on one hand, it deepens the customer relationships because, right, you're providing that innovation, proactive insight, so you know more about your customers. You have that continuous dialogue, let's say. At the same time, from a business perspective, you're driving more recurring revenue because you can do different business models. You have more margin you can actually make. But at the same time, right, so you also create a kind of an unlock portfolio opportunities. So that means that you actually have, because you have that deeper relationship, you can actually have different kind of discussions with your end customers, which, right, deepen that relationship. So today is a bit a different podcast because we actually talk about why is it important or what is the benefit of using an MSP as a partner. So definitely we'll talk about technology. We'll also try to showcase and use some references and use cases to help you understand, like, okay, what then the value of actually using that partner. So please bear with me. This won't be an opportunity for Intercept to actually position its services, but what I try to do is like elaborate and explain, like, okay, what do we believe and what do customers say to us? What's the value of having a MSP as a partner? So I assume that an MSP, there are many of them, right, in the business. So I assume there's kind of, let's say, a fundamental or basic workloads or services all the MSPs are providing. Can I ask you to elaborate a bit on that one?
Yeah, so the basic work or the basic task I think an MSP will do is something around monitoring. So make sure that everything is up and running. Backups, very important thing, of course. Costs, I think cost is an important part as well. And also helping the customer with their questions they have or the issues they are facing. And I think that are the main normal tasks that a MSP needs to do at a bare minimum. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm talking about that, let's say this bare minimum. So if, for example, let's take the first one, the monitoring part. So
Yes.
what kind of services may I, as a customer, expect then from our partner when providing that monitoring support, monitoring services?
Basically a solution where the customer can see his uptime, but also hopefully identify a problem before it is a customer-facing issue.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if there's a low disk space or a low storage capacity, and that can be in an on-prem situation, but definitely in the cloud also, you can have the solution, the problem that you don't have enough storage. You do want to know that upfront, and not at the moment that the customer cannot save anything anymore. So monitor that at the correct way and have the correct alerts and thresholds set, so the customer has its time to fix the problem before it's a real customer problem. I think that's the thing you want to provide to your customers as an MSP.
Yeah. And then the second one you mentioned was backup services. So what can you expect from a managed service provider when it comes to backup services?
Backups. Of course, that they are configured. That's, I think, step one. But step two is to monitor if they are succeeded on a daily basis or multiple times a day. That's a possibility as well in these times. But also check if the backups are working. So do a restore test. Validate if the data that's in your restore is the correct data, if everything is working correctly. So in the case of a disaster, that you can rely on your backup and don't have to say, oh yeah, we have backups, but we never tested them and we can't use them. And then you are a little bit screwed at that moment.
Yeah. The third one you mentioned was cost management. So I assume everybody's looking into cost optimization. So what kind of services do you offer there?
So one thing is to make sure that we set budget alerts. So if for some reason a resource has been activated that will cost a lot of money, that we will see it on time and not at the end when the invoice is presented. But also see together with the customer that the current workload can be shifted from, let's say, just virtual machines to more a PaaS solution. What can be a lot cheaper or have the same costs but more benefits. So basically you get more for the same money. And that's the whole difference in there, that to help the customer there to make the next steps.
Gotcha. The last one you mentioned was support.
Yes.
These are my own words. So what can a then customer expect from support? Because I can imagine at the same time. So support is a very broad topic. So what kind of support does it entails, and how do you actually provide that? What are the differences?
One topic, of course, of support is something has broken and they need to have a solution in there. And that can be that they found out themselves or that the monitoring has mentioned it. And they need help to solve that. Another thing is that there's something wrong. In this case, it can be in the backbone of Microsoft, and they and we cannot see that, but we have the opportunity to contact Microsoft, and they can see the backbone and can see what's going wrong there, and then we are the man in the middle to serve that. But also that the customer is willing to innovate. But one of the developers is busy implementing a new solution or a new PaaS resource and struggling how to get that done in their code or how it needs to be configured. And then we come in play and can help the customer in the conversation. This is the basic needs that you need to, how to configure it. This is the things that you need to take in consideration. These are the pros of this solution and these are the cons of this solution. And helping the customer there to innovate.
Gotcha. So then at the same time, I can imagine that it's really hard to create, let's say, the serverless agreement with what's in scope, what's outside scope. So how do you decide what's in or what's out, and what's the best practice there?
That's a hard part because cloud is innovating that fast. So you cannot say this resources is in scope and this resources isn't in scope. Because then you need to change your SLA, I don't want to say on daily basis, but at least at monthly and quarterly basis. Because then you need to add all that new resource types that are developed and present for us and our customers to use. So you need to make sure that on the broad topics you have the correct scoping there. And make that as clear as possible. But you cannot describe every resource or every resource type and say this is in scope and out scope. So yeah, that's a hard part in the cloud solution.
Yeah. And how do you secure the quality of the services you provide? So, if you understand the question.
to make sure that we have the same set of high expectations that we can deliver to our customers. After each service request, the customer has the ability to rank us in a 5-star rating. And all that rating will be shared within the teams. If there is a 1-star rating, always a call to the customer will follow up, mostly from my end, to see what went wrong and how can we learn together from this situation. Because we cannot do it every time perfect. I'm aware of that, because we're all human, we make mistakes, and it's more how you learn from your mistakes than just making mistakes. So that's really important. We have a customer survey that will be sent out, and they can rate us over there. And there are quarterly business reviews with our customers. So on a quarterly basis, a customer success manager is contacting, having a meeting with the customer, and also the whole process and how we are performing is part of the discussion. And all learning points from there will be taken into the teams to learn from that and see how we can make sure we do it better tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense, right? So customer satisfaction is definitely a prioritized within the company. So what else does Intercept, for example, as an MSP, does to differentiate?
I think due to the fact that we are having a high standard, and that's not something that you really can measure, but what we are offering is high qualified staff. So our staff is really high competent in what they are doing. They know almost all the features that are possible. And if they don't know themselves, a colleague does. We are at the moment that we have more than 70 people. It's quite big. But still, within the technical team, we are really good in finding each other in that technical needs. And from that perspective, I think we are definitely there to help our customers and take them on their cloud journey, and not just be there to check their backups and do the monitoring part, but really being the sparring partner they need in their complete journey, because they cannot stand still as well. We cannot, but they cannot as well, because they need to innovate and go on to the next step day after day, just like we need to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Thanks. That helps. And what about because so you're talking to so you have many customers you're serving with managed services. So you provide support. Do you kind of collect that data as well and trying to understand, like, hey, is there, let's say, a common use case to actually drive that innovation through all that customers, or do you maybe see any trends that are interesting to share back to the end customers? Is that a value play you're playing as well from a managed service perspective?
Yes, we do that on data, but also within the teams. So on a weekly basis, there's a meeting with the managed services team. They are across 2 or 3 DevOps teams. So we have a joint meeting where that's also a moment that we can discuss cool cost-saving features that someone has found out at a customer environment, to share that knowledge. And we're really keen on sharing knowledge. Also, in a lunch and learn session, there are options to share that kind of knowledge in a very limited time space. But that makes it everyone is trying to do the same and make sure that we have the same outcome for each customer.
Yeah. And is there any use case you can share that recently came up from that experience?
So we had one customer that they found out that they had a high spend on storage for logging. Together with the customer, we did the investigation, and we saw that they could reduce the amount of logging by tweaking their application a little bit. By doing so, they solved a lot of money, and this is something that we take into account in other conversations with customers as well, where we see that there is a higher spend on that kind of data, and have that discussion with the customer. Is all that logging needed, or can we make it a little bit less and save money on that end that we can reuse for other opportunities.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense, right? So what else can a customer expect from MSPs besides, let's say, the basics and the fundamentals?
From my perspective, I think it's really to be the partner and to understand what is the customer doing, what's the customer needs, and really understand what the customer wants to achieve in let's say, the next year. You cannot make plans for 5 years, I think, in the IT industry, because it's going that fast and changing that rapidly. That's hard to do so. But what is the plans on technical needs, but also on growing needs of the customer? Does that customer want to grow from just being present in the Netherlands to a global presence? What will that do with your infrastructure? What can we do to support the journey of that customer? How can we make sure that when he say, I want it now in Germany, with a flip of a switch, his infrastructure is ready for that and be prepared? That's really what we want to achieve from our side as a managed service provider, to give that added value to our customers.
Yeah. So and then, do you also maintain or manage anything about the infrastructure itself?
Yeah, we are responsible for maintaining the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't normally we don't do the real coding for the software partner, of course, but we maintain the infrastructure and we try to optimize it day after day, so to make sure, and it's still fit with their solution.
Yeah. And what else do you do in the infrastructure?
Of course, we monitor the infrastructure and also see if there is a change in the possibilities that the customer has, to see if we can make it more secure, make it more resilient, make it more higher available, and also have the discussion with the customer. You now have a single point of failure in this location, so if this one fails, your whole solution will stop working. How can we work together to solve that problem, infrastructure-wise, code-wise? That's why we also have a development team in-house, that they can have that discussion as well with our the developers of our customers, to make sure they do the right things in the code to make that happen.
Yeah, we had Ariane the other day in the studio, so he mentioned it because obviously he was the head of DevOps, or he still is. So I reckon that. So what do you believe then is most important for an end customer of using a partner like Intercept, for example, or an MSP?
Basically, from my end, I want to give the customer some good feeling, and that he can go and sleep well in the night and don't have to worry each night, does my application still work tomorrow morning, or what do I need to do tomorrow morning, or how can I find my people to also be responsible for the infrastructure part. So we are basically connecting to the team of the customer, and extend that customer needs to do their work.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Guarantee.
So you then have a partner looking after you for performance, availability. If there is an escalation, he can actually provide support.
Yes.
So you can focus on the core business.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's totally true.
So what about new features? So what can I expect from a managed service provider when I'm working with them? What kind of new features can I expect then within the service portfolio? Or what's something you're looking into, for example?
Of course, do you mean new resource types or complete adding stuff to our offering?
I guess both.
It's a trick question. So first, the new resource types. That's something due to the fact that we have that eager, high-skilled team that I mentioned before, including 3 MVPs, Microsoft Valuable Persons, most valuable persons. They really know when new things are coming up, and that's something we share internally. And to see also directly how can we use that new feature in our customer set. And that makes that we can also go directly to a customer. Let's say you were waiting for this. Now it's present. Now we can take the next step where you're waiting for, or we see this solution is coming available, and I think in your use case we can now move to that new feature for you. And that's what we do on a daily basis. So sharing that knowledge, sharing and teaching each other about new resources, about new options that are available, and make sure everyone knows about it.
Got it. And the second part of the question?
There it comes. Also, we as an MSP cannot stand still. Also, if you look back within Intercept, we started more than 10 years ago. And we started as a more traditional IT company. And then we shifted over to Azure and focused fully on software-driven companies. That made a huge change for us because we needed to do something with cloud. It's not that... it's not a simple server in a server room anymore. It's a huge environment that you can handle. Also bits and pieces that you cannot touch anymore. You cannot go to the physical server anymore and swap a hard drive if you want to. So that makes that you need to change on a daily basis. And in there we are involving and making sure that our standard and our services are still compliant with our customers' needs, to also having the discussion with customers. So what are you missing from us? How can we improve? And if we have identified a gap in our services, we make sure we have the correct processes in place, and we make sure that we can sell it to our customers.
Yeah. Yeah, got it. So does it also involve like market trends, for example? So if for whatever, maybe, so we had Wesley the other day about generative AI, for example. So do you follow market trends as well? Like, do you implement AI for your services or something like that?
It's definitely something we look into. I don't think you can go around it in these days anymore. So yeah, it's definitely also market driven or marketing driven. But we do make sure that it will fit in how we think we want to offer our service to our customers.
Yeah. So if I may ask, so what's next? So what are you working on?
What's next? Basically, we are reinventing our managed service proposition. Because what I just told, we are moved in more than 10 years from a more traditional IT partner to the current situation. And the whole cloud has changed. So we went back to the drawing board and see what does our customers in a cloud solution wants as a MSP, and make sure that we have the correct offerings there. And we are almost ready to enter the market with that. So that's really cool, but also a big step to take.
And any sneak preview you can provide to us?
It will be more standardized. And we will do it in 3 pillars. So we have a cloud control that will be the base offering, and we think that every customer needs it. And on top of it, you can have 2 modules, I would say. One is platform control, and that's part of a more infrastructure as code based way of working, and including DevOps capacity. And the second one is more a security control, so it's more focused on security. But the cloud control is the base offering that will include the monitoring, the cost control, all that needs that we need to fulfill as a MSP in there.
Yeah. And why chosen that 2 modules?
To make it more simple. Our current model is built per resource and resource type. And as mentioned before, that's changing rapidly. So It's hard to maintain that. It's also not always that clear for our customers how our pricing model works. Also internally, it has its challenges. So now we thought it's time to get rid of it. Also, if a customer has multiple resources and we only manage 2 of them, and something is going wrong with another resource, how will that affect us at a certain point in the whole process? So we don't want to have 1 or 2 resources anymore. We want the whole subscription, because then we can say everything in there, we can take control over it, and we can make sure that we can guide the customer to make it that secure and more resilient and that there is not a VM that was pinned up for a single test and it's still running with a very cheapy password on it and will affect the whole production area. So that's the reason why we need to make some changes in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, got it. And then what can I expect, for example, from the security module? So why security and what makes it unique?
Security is a hot topic for the last years. It will help you as a customer to go more in depth on security and take the next steps in there. Of course, we don't skip security and cloud control, so it's there, but we go more in depth in there. We will use Sentinel in that solution as well. It's not totally configured yet, so there is still some open ends that we need to discuss internally. But it will give you as a customer more insights and also more capacity to change and level up on your security level.
Yeah. And probably platforming because it integrates with automation, right? Because again, so we had Ariane the other day here. We also talked about auto-scaling and automation in general. So I assume that using infrastructure as a code helps end customers to in that definition.
It definitely do. It makes it faster. But also if you have a correct version of your infrastructure as code and something is going wrong with your infrastructure, you can basically pick up your code and deploy it in a total new tenant or total new subscription or total new region and be up and running in no time. Besides of course, your infrastructure code, you need also your backup, otherwise you don't have the data to work with. But having that in place makes a huge step there as well.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, makes sense, right? Yeah, definitely. So if you were an end customer, how would you decide who to work with?
I think, of course, you need to compare the offers that you get, but also which customer of which company gives you the best feeling. And that can mean that it doesn't have to be the cheapest one. It doesn't have to be the expensive one, but you need to have that good feeling, because you need to have that good relationship together. So you need to have the discussions, and that can be hard discussions as well, but you need to have the correct discussions to move forward together. And that's why you need to have that good feeling with your company that you are hiring for that part.
Yeah, and how would I, just from my personal perspective, so how would I secure? How would I get more feeling with the knowledge part? So how can I secure such things when looking into a new partner?
To make sure that the partner has the correct technical needs that you mean?
Yeah, for example, yeah.
Maybe a reference.
Yeah.
So it just ask for a reference customer. He or she can tell you, hopefully, that they are fitting for you. And a good partner is, I think, also eager in spreading knowledge. So from Intercept, we have that workshops that we are offering for free. You can join online. And we share our knowledge through articles, through workshops. And I think that gives more insights in how the technical depth is present at a company.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for elaborating. What would be your ultimate goal designing managed services? Or, for example, if you were leading a managed services company, what would be your ultimate goal?
Yeah, and then say happy customers is not the correct answer. But a happy customer is, of course, a big important thing. But I think the combination of having happy customers, but also having happy people. Because if you have happy people, I think the happy customers will follow on its own. And make sure that you're doing what you are promising. And I think if you have those aspects, I think you have a really good company. And of course, you want to earn some money at the end. But I think having a nice set of people working with and a nice set of customers, that's really...
And from a technology perspective, so what kind of services would you provide to that end customers?
I would say as broad as possible, but scoped as possible. So you, let's say from Intercept, we are focusing on the infrastructure on Azure. We also, of course, have the development part, and we have a data and AI team. But that means that we don't focus on Office 365. We know our way around it. We know some things to do. But if you ask me how to do a SharePoint file server to SharePoint migration, I cannot tell you how. I think I can figure out, of course, but it's not something we want to do on a daily basis. So make sure that you have a correct scoping of what you want to do, and within that scope, as broad as possible.
Gotcha. So my final question to you. Can you do you have any example of a use case what was kind of breathtaking, or like give you an experience like, whoa, what happened here? Because obviously you're talking to many customers. You're all part of the support team as well, so you see many customers from a different angle as well. Any use case you can share?
So some use case, I have a few examples of customers where they were really surprised about our service that we offer. One of them, a customer, not that big customer, not that big environment, but we do at the back end track our spend of our customers as well. And we saw a huge spike in there. So we investigated what went wrong, what was deployed in that subscription. I phoned the customer and I told him what was happening, and he was really shocked at that moment because the change that they made, or one of his colleagues made, was almost tripling their Azure spend for 1 month in just one switch. Unfortunately, that's one of the resources that you not pay per second or per minute. It is just, if you enable it, you pay for a whole month and then you're done. We disabled it and we contacted Microsoft, told the story, something went wrong, someone made a mistake, and they agreed to remove the cost from the invoice. So I can go back to my customer and say, we have solved this for you. Cool. And we make sure that you don't have that bill shocking at the end of the line. And he was really, really happy with that solution. Yeah,
I can imagine. Nice.
Other examples are customers that are having issues outside work hours. They called our escalation duty line. We investigated the problem. We were able to scale up at our end with multiple technicians, had a good communication, had team calls with the customer, and made sure that the downtime was as short as possible, including deployment of a whole new resource set to make sure that they can continue their delivering their product. And that's really something that makes you happy at the end as well. That it's not that fun that a customer had an outage, but the way we act on it together with the customer, and the customer was really happy about it, that makes a really good day. Yeah.
Nice. All right, cool. That's interesting. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
That makes the end, I guess. So if I just recap what we discussed, I think, right, so why using an Azure MSP? Probably because on one hand, it can provide insights through monitoring or whatever service they provide. So, and then of course, we talked about knowledge. So the partner needs to be knowledgeable as well. And I guess if you combine those two and then include support towards it, then you understand that you can actually focus on your core business, while the partner is actually backing up your workloads and tasks, so you can do your stuff. So thank you for explaining today. As mentioned in the beginning, so it's a bit of a different podcast today, but still I liked it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure
for having me here. Yeah.
And for the listeners, this was Talking Out Cloud, and see you in the next one. Thanks.